Hey everyone, welcome to the Dushevnaya demo slash showcase slash whatever I'm calling these videos going forward in the future. Today we're obviously going to take Dushevnaya, we're going to go into a normal map. We're kind of just going to go over her abilities, how they work, and like general use of her in combat. After that, I'm going to try something new. We're going to have like a little discussion at the end. I'm going to give like my personal opinion and assessment of the character, whether, she's a good fit in the meta currently. If you do listen to that part, please, there is an important addendum that I had to like slip into the end of the video after I was done recording. So please listen to that. That's rather important. With that, let's hop in game and get to it. Alrighty, let's hop in on 8-4 hard mode here. This is kind of the best map I can find to use as like an exhibition ground for units. There's not really a whole ton of difficult maps in the game right now that I can use, so we're a little over leveled for this, but we're going to try our best. Also, they nerfed this map since the last time I've recorded here. Don't know why they nerfed it, but they did. There used to be like turrets up here, and then there was like a switch. If you watch my Diane video, you'll see what I'm talking about, but for some reason they nerfed it. Whatever, we're going to make do with what we got here. Try not to focus too much on the numbers, like the damage numbers of the units, because I have the gear switched around in all sorts of goofy fashions right now, because Macchiato will just one-shot everything if I don't do that. So we got some goofy things happening with gear. So once again, like I said, Dush here is using her weapon. So don't worry too much about the numbers. Just try and focus on the gameplay. When you're starting a map with Dush, usually you want to start with her alt. And you'll see why in a second, because it has to do with how she generates convectants. Her alt's going to give everyone a buff when you use it that allows them to inflict frozen on the target and gives them a small 10% damage boost. The only reason you care about the frozen being put on the target is for Macchiato's passive. In the ice team here, she's the only one that really cares, but you see at the second half versus her passive here, when attacking a target with frozen, ignore stability and increase the damage dealt. That's the only person on this team that really cares about inflicting the frozen debuff first. So the issue with this skill, you gotta be careful, is that it does have a range. It's not global like Sumi's shield, so you gotta be careful when you use it to make sure that you actually hit the allies you want to hit. So we gotta change the order up in which we move this. So we gotta do Sumi first. We'll just have her run up and throw some ice somewhere. Doesn't really matter. And then we'll have Macchiato just run up and go on alert. And you'll see why Dush works really well with Macchiato here in a second. We're going to have a lot of skip return because I'm borrowing this Lotta from someone, so I think it's a little jacked. Yeah, there's a good chance she just kills all these units. So we're just going to have her not do anything, just so we actually have someone to use as an example here. So now we can have Dushevnaya come up here, use her alt. You'll see she's going to get a ton of convectants from this. This ability gives her 2 convectants, which will get her to 6, and that's the magic number for her. In addition to that, when she ends her turn, she gets 2. So skill gives her 2. She's going to end her turn. She's going to get another 2. That'll put her to 6 total and max her out. So the next turn we can do a double AoE skill. But yeah, all this does, small damage amp for the team, or everyone that's hit by it for their next attack. And then she's going to give herself a buff that essentially says, hey, you get to counterattack now. Or not really counterattack, they're support attacks. So they do need someone else to trigger them. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll try and slow it down so that we can see the turn. So the reason her skill is good is because you'll see here, this enemy tried to attack Sumi, so that triggered Macchiato's ambush, which then triggered both of these other support attacks. But the order that they happen in is rather interesting. So Sumi does this, so Sumi could actually waste this, because like if this kills the enemy, which it didn't, then it would have been wasted, right? Like if you're using a really geared Macchiato, there's a good chance that the counterattack just kills the enemy straight up. The nice thing about Dushevnaya having her support skill go after, similar to how Nemesis does her skill, is that A, you've already had the enemy stability, either stability broken or have stability damage taken, so there's a good chance they are stability broken. That allows Dushevnaya's attack to fully damage the target, and it doesn't ever get wasted, because of the only time she will ever actually shoot is after Macchiato shoots and the enemy's still alive, like we had in that situation right there. So now that we're on the next turn here, so now that we have full Confectance, we're going to use her other ability here, her Sanctioned Marzana's Sanction here. This one is an AoE skill that it's only 2 tiles in range, so it's not massive, but when she's at full Confectance like this, when she's at 6 Confectance, she gets to do it twice in a row. So you want to position her where she's going to be, and then you're going to unload with it. Now, it does not ignore cover. You'll see this guy on the right here. He's got a 30% cover bonus from this. The guy on the left does not. So keep that in mind when you're aiming it. You want to hit as many units as possible that are not protected by cover. When she puts this down, she's also going to leave Frost Tiles, which also implant the Frost Weakness on these enemies. So you'll see both these enemies here get Frost Weakness, which is super handy for Macchiato. And because we had 6 Infectants, she gets to do it again. Now, you can throw it again on top of them a second time if you really just want to damage them, or if you want to spread Frost Tiles in a more efficient manner. Like, let's say you just want to cover the entire arena in Frost, so that no matter where they move to, they're going to be implanted with Frost Weakness. So let's go ahead and we'll just double up on these guys, because I'd like to kill this guy in the back here. Because now that he's got the Frost Weakness, he's going to take a little extra damage, and even this guy in the front is going to take more stability damage than normal, because you're exploiting a weakness now. So instead of just doing its normal 2 stability, we're going to do technically 4. So luckily, because she's still being protected by her Glacial Domain, which is we got from using her ult here, she gets a little bonus Confectance there. Like, if we read at the bottom of the ability, if the Glacial Domain's active and you have 0 points of Confectance at the end of the turn, you get 2 free, and then obviously you get 2 more because you ended your turn. So she shoots back up to 4. So that means next turn we're going to have a turn of like using a different ability like Hero's Code, and then it'll be back to another double AoE. So she can put out a pretty decent amount of AoE. We'll have Lada just kind of run up here, and I don't know. Now, Lada's ability AoE is not affected by cover. So you'll see this guy doesn't get a cover bonus from it. So I'm gonna run up and just chuck some grenades at him. And then we'll just get her Confectance back. Sumi, you just, you do your thing. So, once again, this is not going to kill the enemy completely, so Dush will try and do a follow-up attack and probably crit and kill him. Nope, she didn't, but that's what would have happened had we had a little better luck. We'll have Macchiato come. Same thing. Once again, these support attacks will not be wasted. This is what's kind of nice about her, is that she's only going to attempt to do... If Macchiato crits, she probably won't kill the enemy because I don't have good gear on her. But if she did crit and kill the enemy here, Dush would save her follow-up attack or her action support for a different target. But we're going to give it a try here. So Sumi starts, it lives, then Dush takes an attack. Which is, like I said, which is good, because that way you don't ever waste attacks, right? Like right there, another enemy died. Dush, she had ran off support actions for the turn, but had she had more, that enemy, because it died, she wouldn't have wasted it on them. So we're back to 4 Confectants. Now we're going to finally use her last ability, Hero's Code. All this one is a targeted damage, and if you have 4 stacks of Ice's Grace, which is what you get when enemies die when they're affected by Frozen, I believe it is. Yeah, Frozen or Frigid. She gets a stack, and so she's capped out at 4 here. All this is going to do now is it just converts it, once it's at 4 stacks, it just converts it to a heavy-hitting ice attack. If we look at the text here, yeah, big long explanation to essentially say it converts it to freeze damage, and it does a little more than usual. So, but we're gonna have her just run up and shoot this guy. Moderately hard-hitting attack, especially with some of her fixed keys that amp the damage, which we'll get into a different time. Can we blow this box up to get access to this part of the map? Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, sure, whatever. And we'll just throw a shield back up. Just want to show one more thing. I just want to show you the full churn like rotation with Dushevnaya, because the way she generates confectants kind of dictates how you use her abilities. So now that we're back to her turn again, you'll see you kind of are forced into a very specific usage of her skills. Like the game, the way she's designed is it kind of like tells you what you should be doing. So as you can see now, her ult's on cooldown still, so can't use that, and we can't use Hero's Code because it has a 3-turn cooldown. So guess what? We're using this, but that's perfect because we have 6 confectants, and that means we're going to need to do it twice. First one applies Frozen or Freeze, and then that one applies Frigid if they would have lived. So that's her in a nutshell. She's pretty straightforward as far as how to use her. Okay, so really quick, we're going to hop back into that same map, same everything. I just want to talk about some of the limitations of the character based on like kind of how she's designed, and then after that I'll kind of give my final thoughts on everything. So the way her ult works is kind of annoying because of the tile range. Unlike an ult like Sumi, who can just like throw it wherever she wants and hit anybody on the map with the shield, this is very restrictive. So you have to be very careful about using this ability, because while it looks very big, like I said, the second you move to a position that's just a little out of like the range, it gets really messy, because this requires you to change how you're going to order your actions. So like if you wanted Lotta to get hit with this ability before she attacks, you either have to make a concession on where you're going to put her, which, to be honest, positioning is a big part of this game. So not being in cover or being in the wrong spot can really mess things up. The other option is to have Lotta go first, but then the problem with that is, okay, she's attacked now, and when she gets the buff, it won't be active till next turn. So it really messes with how you want to order your turns, and it unlike I said, unlike a character who has a global ult, the restrictive nature of the range on this can be really annoying. So that's just something you got to keep in mind. The second issue with the character is that this skill, Marzana's Sanction, it's got a really small range. Like 2 tiles is not great. You really want it to be 3 tiles. And then to compound the problem of, this is going to be a very common situation, what you're looking at here, where you have 3 enemies very close to each other, but you can't hit them all, right? Like there's just no way you can place this AoE where it's going to hit all 3 of these enemies. If I could target back here, you'd have the same problem back here, right? There's like no way you could hit all 3 of these enemies, and like I said, it happens so often. I've been testing with this character a decent amount, and the situation comes up so often where if you just had one more tile of range, like Lotta, there's so much more flexibility. You know, you could put it there, you could put it, I guess right here, yeah, right here. There's so much more flexibility on like how you can place it. I need to push it right here to hit all 3 of these guys, but you could hit all 3 of these guys in the back here. So having 2 tiles of range kind of sucks. Now it is, in fairness, since it's split into 2 halves, right? Like you get when you're at 6 confectants, you get to use it twice. You can, like I said, split the tiles, or you can put like 1 AoE here and 1 AoE here, and then put a ton of frost tiles down, which is great for implanting weakness for characters like Macchiato. But the ability doesn't do a lot of damage in the first place, right? 50 and 70 is only 120 total damage. Obviously, it's going to get the buffs because it's freeze damage, but 120 is the same as Vepli's. Vepli's is 100, and then when they have a movement debuff, which she inflicts when she moves, it'll do another 20% damage. So it's the same overall damage as Vepli, and then on top of that, Vepli also puts a damage amp on the target when she uses her ult. So the AoE is like really annoying to use, and then to really annoy you, it doesn't ignore cover. That I think is just really stupid. The fact that this doesn't ignore cover. It's not a very hard-hitting attack in the first place. It's really restrictive on its placement. It should at least ignore cover. So then the third issue you run into is Hero's Code. It wants 4 stacks to make it useful, right? Because when it's in normal unbuffed state, it's physical damage, which is, once again, not great because you really want to cash in on her passives. And she has a fixed key that also amps freeze damage. But if it's physical damage, you're not going to get those bonuses. So that means you have to have 4 kills. There has to have been 4 units that died on the map when she by the time she's ready to use this ability, which on a map like this is fine because there's lots of enemies, but on boss fights and stuff, you're gonna really struggle. Like if you try and use this character on the Gunsmoke frontline boss, you're never gonna get the Hero's Code in a buff state. Like it's just not gonna happen. So that's very unfortunate, and because it has such a long cooldown, it feels really bad to be on turn 3, ready to use Hero's Code, not have the stacks, and then have to wait forever before you get to use it again, for it to come off cooldown and for you to use it again, and then have 4 stacks hopefully at that point. So it's really restrictive in that regards too. It's just overall there's a lot of things that make the character kind of frustrating to use or annoying to use. Like I said, I don't really want to rag on her too much because I guess we'll just kind of go over to the final thoughts, right? She's good for Frost teams, and if you like the character, she's not a bad character. Like, she does her job very well. She can damage amp the team. I'll try and put up on the screen here. I was testing with her in Gunsmoke Frontline. I'm not a huge fan of her because while she does buff the team's damage, she doesn't really contribute much damage herself. The multipliers on all her skills are very low. So that even Hero's Code, when it's in its buffed state from Ice's Grace, it's only 130 damage, right? That's not a very big multiplier. So, and like I said, her AoE is kind of small as well, like damage-wise. So she doesn't put out a ton of damage herself, but she does, like I said, amp the team's damage, which is nice. It's just, is it worth over another like dedicated DPS character, like another dedicated damage dealer? Not really. You know, like I said, it's probably better just to use a Jack Tololo or Chongju, which both are than the standard banner. Just having one of them on your team will probably make up the damage difference. Now, like I said, there's a lot of utility in the way she works between inflicting freeze and frost tiles and stuff, but like I said, when it comes to just straight damage numbers, she's not that great. Hey, future Ernizzle here. I just wanted to slip this into the guide because this is worth talking about. While doing research for this video, I was double checking to make sure that I wasn't just making anything up or I didn't have any skills totally wrong, and I ran across her expansion key that she's going to get in the future. I don't like talking about unreleased content because we don't know what order we're going to get it in, and we don't know how long we're going to have to wait. So it's like, but for this scenario, it's really worth mentioning because it seems like the devs were in agreement with my assessment that this character is a little undertuned because her expansion key does so much. It does a whole bunch of things. I'll try and put it up on the screen here. This is available in the official document that floats around the Discord server, but essentially this is going to give the team another 15% ice damage. It's going to convert her first ability into ice damage permanently, have it ignore a bunch of defense, have it do even more damage amp to targets, to ice damage amp specifically. And then in addition to that, she's going to buff the 2 highest attack members on the team for even more damage and ice. So there is a silver lining. She does get a significant upgrade with this key. and I think it really will help out her performance. I don't have exact numbers for you, and like I said, it's hard to get exact numbers in a game like this because there's so many variables. But these are not like small buffs. This is a really huge buff to her. So if you like the character, go ahead and grab her. She's a good fit for the Frost team. She's fun to use. Like I said, I do like throwing 2 AoEs and using her skills. Really cool animations, actually. They did a good job with her ult. But is she like a must pull for the Frost team? Like you're gonna like really hamper your performance? I don't think so. I think she's an easy skip if you're not really into the character. And I don't say that lightly, right? Because I try and find like the good in all characters, right? But she has some very inherent design issues, in my opinion. So I'll stop there because I'm just gonna ramble for another 10 minutes or so if you keep me talking about it. But yeah. So like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm being negative about the character, but just be aware that this is not a must pull character. You know, your mileage will vary with her, and but if you like her, like I said, you can get a lot of cool synergies in a Frost only team. And like I said, I have to also correct myself because who knows in the future if they release another Frost unit, like a replacement for Lada, for example, that really makes the Frost team pop off. Who knows what kind of designs they have cooked up in the future, and like all of a sudden she goes from like kind of a mediocre unit to like a core part of the team that enables so much. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. Hopefully, I'll probably do a 5-minute guide on this character. I probably am not gonna do like a super mega guide, though, just because those are very time consuming. But if not, I'll catch you guys later on in the next one, or hopefully for Friday Night Frontline. You guys are always welcome to join me on YouTube Friday nights. So okay, everyone, have a good one.